In 2022, Julie and Todd Chrisley were convicted of bank fraud and tax evasion. They started doing their time in 2023. She was going to do 7 years, he was going to do 12 years. And President Trump pardoned them in May of this year. And anytime a couple gets out of prison and they get back together for an interview, I like to see how that goes. If you pay attention to their body language and their behavior, you can tell if there's been a traumatic event that's happened to them since then. Do they still get along? Are they still in love? Did something happen with the family that they don't know about yet, but we can see it on the family? Things like that interest me. So that's why I want to take a look at this today. And if you're interested in that at all, you're going to know exactly what's happening by the time we get finished with this.
How does it feel to have this whole family back together now, even a month ago? I think you probably wouldn't have even imagined that you'd all be sitting here together on a couch.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. It's amazing, and you're right. You know, you go to bed and you're in a prison, and you wake up the next day, and President Trump has sent you home.
This looks normal, looks fairly good. You can tell he's still the alpha of the group because he's the first one to speak. Nobody's trying to speak over him, and they all look at him. So this looks normal so far.
So I said this morning in talking when we were all getting ready, I says, you know, we owe thanks to God. And I says, and God touched President Trump's heart. God led the people to advocate for us. And so I'm grateful because every night I would pray that God would return me home to my wife and my children. And he did that, so I'm grateful.
Again, everything here looks normal, looks as it should. He's illustrating with his hand on his hand. And when we illustrate, we're emphasizing specific words and phrases, like I did just then, specific words and phrases. And nobody else has really popped up to try to say anything or butt in, anything like that. And again, everyone's just looking at him and letting him speak. That's normal up to this point.
Yes, it is surreal. It's hard to believe that just a month ago we were in prison. I mean, and how quickly things can turn around.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I hope people really realize that things can turn around. They can turn around quick, and we're proof of that.
Yes.
You can tell all of these people are used to being in front of the camera because they had a hit TV show. And when it's somebody's turn to talk, the others quieten up and pay attention to that person talking. And she's really demonstrative when it comes to her illustrators. That's why she's an attention getter as she speaks. Now we're going to see the volume of these people talking. It's going to go way up, especially when the daughter starts talking. She's what I call a loud talker. We'll see that in a couple of seconds. But everything looks as it should. Nobody looks like they're mad. Nobody looks like they're hiding anything so far. Everything looks good. I don't see any trauma on anybody from the past year or so. So things are looking as they should.
Gosh. Well, Grayson, I want to ask you about this because I saw you and your sister about a month ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'd love to know how you're feeling in this moment and also how it's been to have a sister like Savannah, how much she has meant to you over the past 2+ years, having to deal with so much in your family.
Well, Savannah and I have always kind of been attached at the hip, but, you know, I'm very proud of her, and I'm happy that we don't have to hide our political views anymore, and she's being outspoken and, you know, telling people what they need to hear.
And some of what they don't need to hear.
If you've never seen this family on TV, you'd know automatically this is the shy one. This guy doesn't illustrate much at all, and he's mostly adapting with his hands as he smiles, really big. And when you adapt, you're getting rid of that built-up stress and tension. It helps you kind of calm down, self-soothing. Any repetitive motion like that or behavior like that is self-soothing. So he's the shy one. And you can tell that he's really happy. That's a real smile. It's a Duchenne smile. So far, again, everything's looking good.
Honestly, Grayson, he's literally always said, I have 2 moms because we're 9 years apart. And so we've always been attached at the hip. And I say he's taught me more than any person in the world ever could the past 2.5 years. And he thought I saved him when in reality, like, he saved me. And just going through this together has been such a whirlwind. And the day that they got pardoned, he and I were fighting. It was the worst day ever. I just reached a point of like, I've done everything I can do. At this point, there's nothing more I can do. And then I got the call from, Margot text. She was like, hey, I'm gonna call you from my work line. I was like, okay, what's going on? And then that's when we spoke to the president and it happened. So we were at an all-time low, and then it turned around quick.
This is really interesting because the father, Todd, He's doing his hands like this. He's adapting. He's rubbing his hands together. And the son is doing the same thing. If you watch them, they're almost in the same rhythm together as this is happening. The mother isn't, Julie isn't doing much at all. She's just listening and hanging there. So I don't know if it's Todd he can't wait to talk, or if it's just built up stress. I don't think the son wants to talk much at all. Maybe he's afraid she's going to ask him another question. But I was talking about getting loud. I don't think this woman has a hearing problem or anything. She's just a loud talker.
Well, Margot texted, she was like, hey, I'm gonna call you from my work line. I was like, okay, what's going on?
But you can hear her voice bouncing off the walls in there. That's how loud she is. Some people are just like that and they don't realize it.
Grayson, he's literally always said, I have two moms because we're 9 years apart.
On the other hand, maybe she does have some kind of hearing deficit. Maybe she's not even aware of yet. But it's really interesting to see the dynamic of a really loud sister and a really quiet brother.
He and I were fighting. It was the worst day ever. I just reached a point of like, I've done everything I can do.
Well, Savannah and I have always kind of been attached at the hip, but, I'm very proud of her. And
even though he's the younger brother by 9 years, like she said, that's always interesting to me. So I think it would be hard to talk over something like that if you're fairly shy, not really confident. If somebody with that volume's coming in at you, it'd be pretty tough. If you've got an older sister, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
He and I were fighting.
Todd and Julie, did you guys know that this was on the horizon? Tell me about how you each found out that this had happened.
I was upstairs in my room, and someone comes by and says, I just need to tell you, your name was just on CNN. I thought,
Clinton News Network.
Lord. I was like, for what? And they're like, I don't know. And I said, okay. So I go downstairs, and
Her volume is jacked way up. So apparently it's a family thing. Maybe it's something they're just used to talking that loud. I don't know. What's interesting here is when she says, I don't know what. You see that one lip go up, and that lets us know there's contempt there. So she doesn't like the news station this thing was on. So maybe that's what it is. Her illustrators are good. We don't see any grief. We don't see any kind of movement in the brow that lets us know that she's had pain or feels anxiety or anxious or apprehensive about anything. And that's probably due to Botox. This is going to be a tough one. Watch these people. None of their eyebrows move. The one that moves the most is the son, man, and it's not very much at all. There's from here up, nothing moves. Watch this; it's crazy. There's a lot of Botox in that room. Bank of America recently announced a data breach, and here's what's really disturbing about that: they didn't tell anybody about it for months. And on average, it takes a company about 277 days to report a breach. And your personal data could have been exposed months ago, and you're just now hearing about it. This isn't even the first breach that Bank of America has had this year. And last year, Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase both announced breaches. And your bank could be breached right now, and it could be months before you find out about it. Do you want to give a criminal a 9-month head start? No. That's why it's really important to be talking about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. And they're going to let me know fast if anybody tries to use that information to access my credit or bank accounts. And they give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance if the worst case scenario happens. They also provide a bunch of other features that keep you safe online, all inside one app. And you can go to aura.com/Scott Rouse for a 14-day free trial. And that'll be enough time for Aura to find out if your personal data has been exposed. You'll learn about it long before any of these companies are forced to tell you about it. I highly recommend you do this right now, because the only thing most of these companies are going to do to help you is offer you free credit monitoring. Free credit monitoring after the fact. And that's like installing security cameras after your house has been robbed. Look, I get it. There are so many data breaches, your social security number might as well be written on a bathroom wall. But if you haven't been a victim to fraud yet, then why are you still rolling the dice? If it's because protecting yourself feels overwhelming, let Aura do all the hard work for you. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to these data breaches. And if you don't want to either, then you can go to aura.com/Scott Rouse for a 14-day free trial. I'll put that link in the description below.
And for those of you who don't know, using the telephone is not an easy task in prison. So you have to get in line. I sat in line, went into the little room. I called Savannah. She didn't answer.
My
Called
phone
Gray.
at that point was going absolutely
Yeah.
insane because the White House tweeted Trump knows best with the video. So my phone,
I called Gray. He didn't answer. I'm thinking, okay, if I leave this TV room, I have to go get in the back of the line and wait again. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try one more time. I called Savannah one more time.
Some people are really good at telling stories and some people aren't. Julie's really good at telling stories, and she does it to command attention when she's doing it. If you listen to her voice volume right out of the gate, bang, it's really loud when she starts talking.
For those of you who don't know, using the telephone is not an easy task in prison.
But other times when she wants to get your attention, have you come in closer, she gets a little bit quieter. Her illustrators are really big at sometimes, and then other times are really small. So that makes you engage with her, makes your brain go, what's going on here? Because you see a lot happening. Your brain sees a lot going on and goes, this interests me. What's going to happen next? Now, Savannah's body language is similar to that. It's not the same, but it's similar to that because most of her illustrators are low when she's talking about things, whereas Julie's are really high. Now, Todd's usually aren't huge, but they're about mid-level. They're right in here. So that all those things let us know there's confidence there. But when you have an extreme amount of confidence like Julie has, telling a story like that and telling it really loud, you don't have a problem doing that at all. And people listen to it. You can tell they're all listening to it, but she's telling a story that's exciting and it's something that happened to all of them. That's why they're so excited and paying such close attention to what's happening. But she's a pretty good storyteller.
And she said, he did it, he signed it. And I just started busting out crying. And everyone was
hung up
looking
on me.
around, and then I just hung up. I was so nervous that I just hung up. It was the craziest thing, and everybody was just looking at me because, unfortunately, most of the news that you get in prison is bad news. You know, so they're like, are you okay? I'm like, I am, I'm getting out of here, I'm getting out of here. And so it was crazy, and then from there, it was just, it was unreal.
There are 10 eyebrows in this room, and not one of them moves, not even a little bit. Watch this again and pay attention to their eyebrows. Nothing's moving. I know it's because of Botox and it's like, no big deal. That's a pretty big deal though. I mean, that's pretty hardcore when nothing moves like that and everybody's got it. Maybe that's what gives this thing that weird sheen where you feel like something's not right because you're seeing everything normal. You're seeing smiles and hands moving and torsos going back and forth as they get excited. But there's nothing going on up here. And this is the billboard for emotion. That's the first thing we see when we see somebody, even from a distance. We see that the eyebrows go up. We see the brow squinch together. We see the glabella come together. If they're angry, we can tell a whole lot going on. But there's not a lot of movement there. But I find myself checking those to see what's happening. Maybe it's because of what I do for a living. But subconsciously, you do it too. You may not know it, but you're looking there too. And so it just kind of puts this odd feeling on it. And I'm sure if some people feel off-put by them or put off by them, however you want to say it, I'm sure that might be part of it because they seem like nice people. This woman's a great storyteller, but that eyebrow thing, that whole forehead situation, the brow, just makes it feel weird.
Wow. What about you, Todd?
I was coming back from the library, and one of the guys stopped me. He goes,
And also when he says library,
well,
makes it sound sophisticated, but it
well,
is
you know,
not a
as much of a
library.
library as you can have. And this guy stops me. He goes, man, I think you just got pardoned. And I said, yeah, okay. And I just kept right on walking. And so when I went into my dorm, one of the guys, the COs, he came by and he goes, are you good? And I said, as good as I can be. And he said, Todd, you just got pardoned. They sent me down here to make sure you're okay. And I said, well, they don't need to be worrying about me now. Hell, if I'm pardoned, I'm great.
So far, I'm not seeing anything that tells me either one of these people have suffered any kind of trauma while being in prison. They look like they still love each other. They look like they're still getting along. The family, I think, feels better that everybody's back together. But the way he's talking, I've been in a lot of prisons. I've never been in one like this where you have a dorm and somebody just pops by and asks you how it's going. I don't know, man.
And so when I went into my dorm, one of the guys, the COs, he came by and he goes, are you good? And I said, as good as I can be. And he said, Todd, you just got pardoned. They sent me down here to make sure you're okay.
So I'm not sure how bad this prison was, how much of a real prison. And I think somewhere in here or in one interview, he does say it wasn't that bad. You know, it was more like camp. But boy, it sure sounds like camp. But you talk to people who've been in real prison, they don't sound like that at all. When they come out, they don't look like that at all. And they're not all, they're happy to be out, but they're not all, like there's no problem whatsoever because they've got things to think about that happened back in prison. I don't think we're seeing any kind of any traces of trauma from prison on either one of these two.
So I went and called her, and as soon as she answered, she goes, "It's signed, it's signed." And I started crying and said, "Well, you did it. You did it."
At the same time, he's talking about and reliving the moment he learned he was getting out of prison. So he's pretty excited. And that's great. That's a big deal. What we don't see in here are those facial expressions that let us know he feels like he's escaping this horrible, horrible life that's back in prison, like something that terrible has happened. And those kind of expressions are a combination of the happy, smiling expressions and then sadness or a little bit of grief. We don't see any grief in here on him at all. I'm sure he's leaving a bunch of friends in there that he made, but we don't see grief. I don't think there's any trauma that he's leaving behind over there or thinking about as he's talking about getting out. Because I think what he's expressing is his excitement to see his family again, to be able to run around and do things he wants to do, but not the excitement from getting rid of whatever that traumatic experience that would have been in prison. Well, we don't see that happening here. So I don't think he's had any traumatic experiences in prison.
But Savannah would see me every weekend or every other weekend. We talked every day, and she would give me the recap of what she was doing and who she was talking to and what she was going to do next. And I would always say, if it's God's will, if it's God's will. And there were times that she would be frustrated because it wasn't moving at the speed that she wanted it to be. And I would have to remind her that it's in God's time, not our time. And that's exactly how it worked out. It was in God's time.
This is his example of telling a story. Now I can see why Julie and Todd get along so well. She's more of the creative side and he's more of the analytical side. And how do we know that? Listen to the way he structures that story he's telling.
Savannah would see me every weekend or every other weekend. We talked every day, and she would give me the recap of what she was doing and who she was talking to and what she was going to do next. And I would always say, if it's God's will.
It's not like, okay, well, here's what happened. And then he starts telling it, right? He's just saying what happened between he and Savannah as it went back and forth. He doesn't add all these other things to it. When we listen to Julie's story.
For those of you who don't know, using the telephone is not an easy task in prison. So you have to get in line. I sat in line, went into the little room. I called Savannah. She didn't answer.
Boy, there's a lot going on in there. She makes a picture in your mind. That's really tough for a storyteller or for a non-storyteller. So that right there gives me the impression that they get along because he's almost the opposite of her when it comes to seeing the world. He's more analytical and she's more creative. So I'm not seeing any kind of trauma. I'm not seeing any kind of bad vibes between anybody. I'm not seeing any kind of anger, any kind of resentment, nothing in there. I think they're all just happy to be back together again. And there's no, like I said before, there's no signs of trauma that anybody's had in the prison anyway. So I don't think there's a problem there at all. I think the son is glad to see him and is glad they're going to be home. I know the daughter's glad to see him and glad because she's worked really hard to make that happen. And of course, Todd and Julie are happy as well. This looks pretty good. I mean, it looks, for somebody who's had a TV show for so long and they're like TV people and they're used to being on camera and used to everybody looking at them and paying attention, a lot of that is controlled. A lot of their behavior is controlled because they're used to people looking at them or the camera looking at them. So the other stuff is kind of hard to hide, though. There are things you can't hide. Like when you've had a horrific experience, you can hide a little bit from a lot of people, but there's always going to be somebody that can see that, see right through it. And I don't think anything bad happened to them in the last couple of years, as far as, personally getting beat up or being threatened really bad or being afraid for months on a time or being put in solitary for a long time, because that'll change you. I'm not seeing any of that. So I think they've come out probably just as healthy mentally as when they went in. So I know I'm not trying to be funny about that. I'm just saying I don't think it affected them much at all. But we'll see what happens on the TV show, I guess. All right, if you have any questions about body language, just email me, bodylanguagequestions@gmail.com, and I'll get right on it.